or at least help run the meeting. So the meeting is adjourned at 4:33, and we're going to start with a council order. We did that, and then we're going to hop to roll call. Commissioner Noah Baker. He couldn't make it. Commissioner Priscilla Boate.
Here.
Commissioner Kristen Conkle.
Here.
Commissioner Tom Lammy.
Here.
Commissioner Mary Ellen Metzger.
Here.
Commissioner Roger Skurlock.
Here.
And Vice Chair Amy Wolkowinski.
Here.
All right. The Sustainability Commission has a land acknowledgement that I will read right now. The Sustainability Commission humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area of Indigenous nations and Aboriginal stewards. These lands, still inhabited by Native descendants, border mountains sacred to Indigenous people. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home. All right, we also have public comment. There are 2 people in the room, and then I think it's my understanding that Steve will have a public comment as well. So are you here in your capacity as a council member?
Yes. I had to think about that for a minute.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Jim McCarthy. I am on council. And I just happened to be in here for another chore, and I have to leave in just a minute. But when I heard that they were having this sustainability meeting, I couldn't resist but poking my nose in here. And why would I do that? I just want to thank everybody on this commission for doing what you do. It's a very important commission to me and the whole council. And see, I'm speaking on behalf of the council, which I'm not allowed to do. But I'll keep it aside. I just want to thank everybody for the good work you guys do. It's important work. And Nicole, hello. Anyway, that's all I really have to say is thank you, thank you, thank you. And keep up the good work. We really need you. So I'll leave it at that. And thank you.
Tia.
Temporary chair, Tia. Anyway, I'm going to go because I have something else I have to do. But again, thank you.
Well, thank you for your service.
See, Anthony.
Thank you, council
Right,
member.
we're all part of the team Flagstaff. Okay. Thank you.
And then Anthony.
Hi, my name is Anthony Garcia, and I found out that the thing that I was going to speak to is already on the agenda, so public participation is not appropriate at this time. With that, I will say goodbye, y'all.
Thank you. Thanks for stopping by. Okay, and then Steve, did you still want to speak at this moment?
Yes, thank you. My name is Stephen Thompson, and I serve as a supervisor within the Sustainability Division. And I'm here tonight just to provide a little bit of information about one of our signature events coming up in April, and to just invite you all to participate in different ways. And the event that I'm speaking of is the annual Earth Day celebration, this year being held on Saturday, April 20th. The main event is 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Bushmaster Park. And this is an opportunity for our community to come together and meet and greet each other and explore different sustainable-minded organizations and groups that will have tables set up throughout Bushmaster Park. Typically, we have around 50 different organizations, from the Forest Service, National Park Service, as a lead-up project, Humane Society, any group that is interested in promoting hands-on activities and providing education and resources about sustainability within our community is invited to participate. We have 3 workshops that are free to the public throughout the event, as well as live music. And this year we do have an Indigenous group, a group of youth corn dancers who will be opening up the event for us. So I'm really excited to see that happen this year. We also end up having several food trucks and food vendors at the event. And it's just a great time to come together and celebrate this place that we call home. And I would like to invite the commissioners, the sustainability commissioners, to join us for this event. And there's a couple different ways that you can get involved. One way is to have a table that supports the sustainability office and highlights the work that the commission does. So definitely encourage that, as well as there are volunteer opportunities, whether it's litter cleanups or being Albert the sustainability squirrel, which is a real hit with everyone who attends this event. We can share photos, and you can check out the webpage as well, City of Flagstaff, Earth Day. Just type that into a search engine and it'll pop up with a photo reel that you can see some of the past activities and events. So volunteer, be Albert, have a table, assist us in that way, or just come and enjoy the event. We will make sure to have a posted potential quorum, so that way you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And yeah, that is what I have. And if you want to reach out directly to me, you can send me an email. You can get my contact from Tia, also the website as well. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you all so much, to echo what Councilmember McCarthy was saying. Like, the work that you do is really important. And I, for one, am really happy and proud that all of you are serving in this capacity. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, now we'll move into the approval of February minutes. Did anyone see any changes they wanted to make? If not, may I get a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from February.
I second the motion.
Right. Hearing no, okay, if there's no objection, we will adopt the motion to approve the February minutes. Hearing no objections, the February minutes are adopted. Okay. And then we are moving into business. At this time, I would also like to ask for a motion to move the update and recap on the petition to revise the carbon neutrality plan to kind of right after the introductions, because Nicole Antonopoulos, our sustainability director, is available right now, but then we'll have to hop off due to a huge grant deadline that's coming up. So
You want a motion? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I so move.
okay, do I have a second to move the agenda item 6E up to 6A, to right after 6A?
Second.
I second the motion.
There's no objection. We will adopt the motion to move that agenda item. Hearing no objections, we'll move that agenda item. All right, so Nicole, do you just want to kick us off?
I would love to. Thanks so much, Tia and commissioners. For our new commissioners, welcome. My name is Nicole Antonopoulos, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Sustainability Director. I look forward to meeting everyone in person next month. And as Tia noted, we are submitting a very large EPA grant within hours. So my time is directed elsewhere. I hope everyone can understand and appreciate that. And my hope is that we'll have some really exciting news in a few months about our EPA grant. I did want to provide the commission with a quick update, and I'm going to share my screen here, so bear with me for a moment. But I wanted to provide an update regarding the City Council meeting on Tuesday. And let me just go ahead and current slide. And I want to make sure you can see my screen okay. I'm working from multiple monitors, so I never know. But yeah, okay, Great. So just for a very high level quick recap, in September, a citizen petition was submitted to the city to reprioritize the carbon neutrality plan and include specific goals and strategies for addressing wildfire, flooding, and drought. The commission, for the new commissioners, the commission drafted a letter opposing this request, and a lot of people came out to speak at the city council meeting on Tuesday, supporting this request for revision and not supporting the request for the revision. Staff took the stance of, I'm not sure if the screen is going to, are you seeing a staff recommendation screen or is it still on options?
Staff recommendation.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So it's that monitor that it's using. Great. So the staff recommendation to the city council is that we just continue to focus on the work that the city is already doing to address fire, flooding, and drought. We, as a city organization, have 15 different plans that have been formally adopted by the city council, plans and projects that have been adopted and approved by the city council, focusing on fire, flooding, and drought. And so while the carbon neutrality plan highlights those, a lot of those strategies, we did not recommend that all of those plans come under the carbon neutrality plan. We did offer that during the next schedule revision, we are happy to expand the discussion on adaptation priorities, which were the focus in our 2018 Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. But when the climate emergency was brought forward, the goal was to achieve carbon neutrality, essentially focus on mitigation through 2030 with the concept of resiliency, adaptation, and equity embedded in the work that we're doing. And the city council approved the staff recommendation, so we will not be making any changes to the carbon neutrality plan. And of course, we have gone ahead and added a page to our website that promotes all of those plans that I referenced, and I'll just, don't look, I'm just going to scroll back super quick. But these are all the plans that are currently, plans and projects that are currently focusing on these three areas. And so what we've done is we've created a web page on our climate action kind of section, web pages that individuals, if they're interested, can immediately hyperlink to these plans and projects and get more information on what's being done. It was a healthy, robust conversation. It was long. I think we were there for about 4.5 hours, and I just want to extend my gratitude to members of the community from all perspectives, all sides that came out to speak or submitted comments, and we had some commissioners there as well. So I just want to extend my gratitude, and we'll keep moving forward and plugging on. And with that, just wish us the best of luck with our EPA grant application. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Nicole, I just wanted to say that you did such a great job at that.
Oh, thank you.
You were so poised and answered everyone's questions so eloquently. And
Oh, thank you so much.
The sustainability mission.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks for taking the time to just to watch and be there. It was a packed room, and yeah, it was I think it was a very healthy conversation. And my approach is anytime we have an opportunity to further explain our work, that's a good thing. So great. All right. Well, if there aren't any other comments, I'm going to be reviewing this hefty document. And yeah, hopefully we get to come back in a couple months and share some exciting news. Thank you.
Alrighty. Here, there's a community member trying to get on, and I just want to make sure she has the opportunity to get on. So.
And to see the EPA plan. You want to request eventually?
If you would like, we can add it to a future agenda item for sure.
Great. Look to know what you guys are asking. I was curious about the EPA grant, like
Oh,
what
we're actually
what
applying.
it looks like, what they're asking for.
I don't want to go off topic, but I'm happy to send a recap to Tia and she can send that out to the commissioners as an update.
Recap of what?
Of the EPA grant.
Yes, good.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
didn't know you were listening. I didn't know you were listening.
All right, and then I'd like to continue on with our introductions. Commissioner Skurlock, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about why you wanted to join the commission, what you like to do in your free time, maybe.
Okay, let's see. My name is Roger Skurlock. I'm a retired chemist, and I was previously employed by the DPS Crime Lab, and they have a satellite laboratory here in Flagstaff. So, let's see. I'm love to bicycle around and commute by bicycle, fix bicycles, we'll fix everything. My family and we maintain a yearly garden with captured rainwater and home composting. And so we like to pretend like we're acting sustainably when we can. So maybe we'll go further in electrifying our house. We heat mostly with firewood, and so it seemed like a good fit to get involved with things that have to do with, making Flagstaff livable on into the future. So that's what we hope to do, and I hope to do. I guess.
Commissioner Laney?
I'm Lammy. I'm still working. I'm in the solar industry and work there. Been in Flagstaff, well, just right at a year. We just had our anniversary of living here. Decided to apply for this. It was pointed out that there was an opportunity, and I was encouraged to take the opportunity. And it's a field that I'm very interested in. I think passionate about it in lots of different ways, and hoping to learn, a lot and see if I can contribute something to keeping Flagstaff a place we really enjoyed living so far.
Thank you. Commissioner Metzger?
You want me to talk too?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know you.
That's true. I'm a retired high school administrator. But for many years, I retired in 2006. So I got to retire young. I'm a native Arizonan, second generation. My dad was born and raised in Prescott. I was raised in Casa Grande. I was born in Nogales. I first came to Flagstaff in 1996 as principal of Sonoma High School. Then I moved to Tucson, was principal there, and came back. And I have had a love for the environment. My first science class at ASU was in environmental studies. So I've always found it was a very important thing for us to see the conflagration of all sciences that come together to make our world a better place. That's why I'm interested in sustainability.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to hop to the commissioners online. Commissioner Priscilla Boateng.
Hi, everyone. My name is Priscilla. I am a policy analyst, public policy analyst. I have been in Flagstaff since 2016, and I joined the commission as a way to be able to serve Flagstaff and also to ensure sustainability in the community as well. I love hiking and also swimming anytime I get a chance. And yeah.
Thank you. Vice Chair Wolkowinski.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amy Wolkowinski. I'm a geologist and a carbon analyst. And over the last few years, I've kind of pivoted paths in my career and have been working with a lot of climate tech startups and labs on the NAU campus. I joined the Sustainability Commission because I was interested in learning more about civic engagement and how things work in Flagstaff. And I've had a love of sustainability my whole life. My undergraduate major was in environmental science. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I've lived in Flagstaff for the better part of the last 30 years. And I love all things Flagstaff, the outdoors, the snow sports, the mountains, and just everything we have access to that's pretty nearby, like Grand Canyon and rivers, etc. Thank you, new members too. I'm so glad you're with us. Excited to get to know you and work with you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Conkle?
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry I can't be there in person today. I have another thing immediately after this. So I'm Kristen Conkle. I am a.
Your audio is cutting out a little bit, Commissioner
Oh, I'm
Conkle.
so sorry.
Oh.
I know how to fix it. Is that a little better?
Yes.
Be a tiny
Yes,
bit.
that's better.
Okay, so I teach in the public health program at NAU. I've been on the commission for 4 years now, and I've been living in Flagstaff for 6. So excited to work with all of our new folks. Tom, so happy to see you here. Sorry I don't get to meet you in person. I've heard a lot about you from Derek, so it's nice to have some solar people on the commission with us.
Marissa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Marissa Miller. I'm the new administrative specialist at the Sustainability Office. And I've been in Flagstaff for about 6 years. And like everyone else, I love the outdoors. Love the hiking trails here. And yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Genevieve, do you want to go really quick?
Hi, everyone. I'm Genevieve here to be Resilience Analyst with the Flagstaff Sustainability Office, and I also like the outdoors, Flagstaff. So I look forward to getting to know everyone better.
And as you all know, my name is Tia Hatton. I'm the commission liaison. I have been in Flagstaff for just over 1.5 years, coming from Central Oregon. And growing up loving the outdoors and just always having an inclination towards resource conservation and sustainability. I'm very happy to be in this field.
Since we all live the outdoors, can we have a future meeting outside sometime?
I'll have to check with the flex.
I'm just kidding.
Oh,
well, the only problem is we'd have to work on some kind of lighting system. They're gonna have to get involved with that, so that's all right.
Okay, thank you, commissioners and sustainability staff. I'd like to hand it off to Michelle McNulty, City of Flagstaff Planning Director. Did you want to share your screen?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I remember my charter. Hello, everybody. I'm Michelle McNulty. I'm the planning director for the city. With me is Tiffany Antal, representing co-manager. And while Genevieve is here because she's with sustainability, she's also here as part of this project team. And then not with us is Jennifer Michelson and Jessica Watson with housing. It's going to make sense in a minute why I introduce all those people. Share this. Let it go out and try it again.
Okay, sounds good. I also have it up and hand this over to you.
All right, so we're here to talk about the land availability, suitability study and code analysis project. There are about 60 slides. I'm going to try to go through them very quickly. We do have 2 accompanying reports, one specifically on the land availability suitability and one on the cabin or the code analysis project. Those will be made available to you hopefully by the end of tomorrow. So if I brush through things too quickly, you'll have those reports that you can review in more detail. And then I'll talk more at the end about how you'll be able to get comments back after today. Sorry. Okay, we're doing this in partnership with our
consultant team led by Dow Engineers. Sub is Cascadia Partners. Cascadia Partners is actually also the lead of our regional plan update, which is really a great opportunity to cross-pollinate these two projects. And then we have GBD, who is an architect looking at our building and fire codes. So this is a multi-pronged initiative to address critical long-term planning and resilience needs. It's a partnership between planning, housing, sustainability, and Mountain Line. So not only is it a partnership and the work that's being done, but a financial commitment and partnership. It's highly coordinated with a lot of various departments that this is going to impact, which is, our engineering, development engineering, transportation, economic vitality, fire, building, water services. And not only is this project, I think, going to deliver much needed data that we need to support much needed code changes, but it's also providing a forum for much needed high level coordination between multiple state divisions. Can everybody online hear me well, just before I keep rambling? Okay. So quick.
Very little response on that, I know. Obviously, they can't hear you.
So the last is, think of it like a land inventory. And so, Flagstaff really we're bound by mountains, national forest. So we have limited land and we need to understand how much land do we have and what are the development potentials and what are the development barriers. And that's really important as we look at the code analysis to understand what codes need to be updated and amended so that they're being done so in a way that reflects our real life challenges and not just because this is what the national best practices are. So we're really trying to right size our code changes to our actual land and needs. I also want to say that this is looking at, what's not working, but more importantly, it's also looking at what is working. Our codes aren't perfect, but there's a lot of great things in them and we don't want to lose sight of that. And we're also testing a lot of this against real projects so that we can, again, get that on the ground truthing. So starting with the last, I'm going to call it the land availability suitability, the last from now on. So the project area, and this is a map of the project area. So that area in gray is actually the city limits. The area in red is still within the regional plan area and also in the area that Metro Plan, our transportation planning arm, that they cover. And then that area that's a red and yellow hatch, that's our urban growth boundary. So the reason why we looked a little bit outside of our urban growth boundary is that we actually in the regional plan have rural activity centers in those county areas. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't eliminate those from being potential areas that we might see some redevelopment. So the last is a very high level process, and I'll kind of get into more of what that means. But so we looked at really identifying an inventory of sites. We looked at what was vacant and then also what was underutilized. When we say underutilized, that's a property that the improvements are 10% of the land value. Typically, that's where you start to see reinvestment happening at that point. And then we went on to further identify opportunity sites. Flagstaff's code is pretty progressive as far as where we allow residential development. So we ended up almost looking at lands under every land use designation outside of just residentially zoned lands. Commercial and industrial allow residential as a mixed use. And then with public facility lands, this was kind of an awesome thing that happened. Up until last month, residential, unless it was just like workforce or like caretaker, residential wasn't allowed in our public facility zones. And that was amended to allow residential as a conditional use permit. And that might open up a lot of different opportunities for our different agencies like school district, forest service, and a myriad of other properties in that zone. And a lot of it's not even owned by the city. Again, this slide just talks about that vacant and underutilized. So kind of that initial brush of what parcels are out there, and then we did a secondary screening just to remove certain things that weren't being picked up by GIS, like if there were condo building parcels or private roads that didn't get picked up. And then we did an environmental screening. These environmental attributes that were considered are things that we regulate by code. So we really wanted to keep the methodology to just looking at what is regulated. So right now it's wetlands, stream, buffer, floodplain, and slopes over 25%. And so that way we could look at constrained acreage. And that's acreage that has limitations on what can be built, and then unconstrained. Here is a map of kind of what shook out as far as the lands vacant and underutilized. The purple shows the underutilized, green is vacant parcels, and then the gray are where we have that overlap of the environmental constraints. When you have access to the report, you'll be able to drill down into maps that show these broken out to a lot more detail. So this, I know this could be just acknowledging this might be hard to read. So kind of general conclusions about the inventory in general is that we have about 8,000 plus acres of vacant land, 6,735 acres of which are residentially zoned, and about 5,400 acres of underutilized land. And then factoring in the environmental constraint, about 13% of the vacant land within the study area is environmentally constrained by streams, corridors, wetlands, steep slopes, or floodplains. But one thing to keep in mind is that we do have the Rio de Flag project, and that has the potential to help alleviate the floodplain of a lot of those properties. So it's a very good project. So of all that land, we have about 7,000 acres of vacant buildable and 48,000 acres of underutilized buildable land. So those are the lands that represent what's most likely to be developed or redeveloped in the future. The most common constraint is steep slopes. One thing I didn't talk about, just to kind of prep you, another thing that we regulate are tree resources. That's harder to do on a GIS exercise, and so residential, commercial, industrial projects are required to, that are in the resource protection overlay, are required to retain 30% of their tree coverage. Residential projects are required to say 50%. And then the way we calculate trees, you only get to count for the trees, that 25% of the trees that you're required to save in the slope, and the other 75% has to be on the site, which gets a lot into our buildable area. So we say that to mean that while we've said that this is the area that's constrained, it might be further constrained when you start to add in those other factors.
So buildable area isn't necessarily included with the trees.
Exactly.
That's buildable, but that doesn't mean they can literally build there. Okay.
Exactly.
Tree house.
Yeah. So then kind of looking at the overall inventory, the consultant team with the city team worked to identify about 50 opportunity sites. And those are just, by opportunity sites, we mean sites that really look like they are ready to be redeveloped, whether there's infrastructure projects or other things that we're seeing in those areas that might signal an area to be kind of right for redevelopment.
Yes, the definition redeveloped versus developed.
Thank you for that. And I guess developed or redeveloped, we should say. And the goal really was to select sites at very locations, sizes, owners, and states of development. And so we have a mixture of private and public properties. I do want to be very clear that if it's private property, we're not giving any entitlements. We're not saying anything about that property like, oh, if the city wants to come in and redevelop it. We're just saying this is inventory, and we have some that are privately held. So we also looked at the downtown Flagstaff Vision and Action Plan, which was recently supported by the council in January of 2024, which identified several catalytic projects to really activate our downtown. And so some of those were included as opportunity sites, as well as our Arizona State Land Trust, because we know that those are going to be kind of the parcels that start to be where we get our development. We also looked at the U.S. Forest Service administrative sites in 2018. There was a farm bill that was passed that allows the Forest Service to, on their administrative sites, not the national forest, but just those administrative sites, to partner with local governments to do affordable or workforce housing projects. And so right there's a really good opportunity. Those are also properties that are likely to be zoned public facility. And so with that code change, allowing residential through a conditional use permit, that could open up some more opportunities for more housing variety.
The operative word there being administrative sites.
Administrative, yep, 100%, yeah. No one has touched, the idea of this is making sure we're efficient with the land we have, so we don't have to open up the other lands. And then also, as housing being part of this, we wanted to look at our city-owned public housing sites that may be right for redevelopment as well. So again, here's a really hard to read map of overall opportunity sites. And then if you zoom in, the map to the right is are the ones that are the downtown catalytic sites. In the report, you will be able to dig into each of those sites and get as much information as you ever want to get about a piece of property. So when we talk about, as part of this opportunity sites, we're talking about the readiness of the site. And so we're talking about, does it have the potential for a significant residential yield? So that might be the size of the site and the underlying zoning district of what it could get from a density standpoint. So the higher density zoning you have, the higher opportunity rate you're going to have, especially if you're a large site. And if you're like a lower zoned, like a RR, which I'm going to talk about, rural residential or estate, which are 1 unit per acre, that's a lower opportunity because you're going to need to go through a process to rezone that and get a higher density zoning district to really get that density that we're looking for. We also look at infrastructure readiness. So where do we have water, sewer, utilities? Is the infrastructure the rights of way there for access? So the more infrastructure, the newer the infrastructure, the higher the readiness. The lack of infrastructure or aging infrastructure kind of means a low readiness. So an overview of those opportunity sites, 11 are owned, just kind of some general characteristics. 11 are owned by the city, 4 by the county, 4 by the National Forest, 5 by state land trust. But the thing to note with that one is it's only 5 sites, but it's over 2,000 acres. And then about 32 sites are privately owned, which is about 365 acres. Kind of the current development land status, most of the lands are actually undeveloped. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then 6 of the sites were surface parking. And so one of the things, even though I'm sure most people, if not everybody in this room, hates seeing surface parking, you can also always look at surface parking as opportunity because it's actually where you might see your infill. 36 of the sites were commercial zoned, 30 are public facility, and then kind of in the residentially zoned, you see that the most acreage is under that rural residential and estate residential. So again, that's that 1 acre, 1 unit per acre. So that low density, with our high density residential being 22 acres, and the median density 26. So that tells us a few things. The majority of the land that we need is going to need to be rezoned. And it's also missing a lot of infrastructure. So it's going to be high cost to redevelop or to develop because it's not developed. Downtown specific, that's, there's a readiness there because you have the zoning district available, but you have aging infrastructure. There's the floodplain and drainage, but luckily the Rio de Flag project may help out with that issue. Proximity to railroad noise as far as certain funding from like HUD, because you have to do so much mitigation to damper that noise that it adds a lot of housing costs. It's great from a sustainability and our climate goals because it's that infill density that you want, close to services that helps people move away from the car. But there's the barrier to other, types of housing. But we need all types of housing, so that's okay. And then access and parking can be a challenge in the downtown as far as getting density. And the reason why that's a challenge is because of we don't have like dedicated, parking garages. So a lot of the development is going to have to take care of its parking itself, which takes up space. We also looked at the JWP area, and for those that aren't familiar with that term, that's the John Wesley Powell. So that's kind of by Little America. Canyon Del Rio is being developed one of the new housing subdivisions at one bookend over at 4th Avenue in Butler, and then you have Pine Canyon to the south and the east of that. We have a lot of development out of
My house, just 2 blocks from there.
Okay. And so, we're seeing a lot of development in this area. It's mostly zoned residential. There is the road extension that's going through that will connect that. It's the 4th Avenue connector that's kind of going to bypass down 4th Avenue and go through this area. It could open up a lot of for development, but there are still challenges in there as far as really getting density, and that's the topography for one. Anybody that hikes in the trails over there, there's a lot of canyons. It's very beautiful. And again, the zoning is for low density. So in order to really start to get the density that we need to support activity centers that can kind of create that complete neighborhood, we need to up that density a little bit, a lot. I kind of have talked about these conclusions, but really at the end of the day, we have very few sites that are actually high opportunity and infrastructure level. So of all the sites, only 7 are both high opportunity and high readiness. And that's because, again, we're talking about most of our parcels we're looking at are those larger lots that are on the periphery of town and are going to require rezones and infrastructure to be brought to them.
Is annexation of additional land off the table completely or just not available because of some reason?
That's a big question. And it's not off the table.
Amanda was loaded.
It's not, maybe we can come back to that because that's just a very nuanced and it has to do with, it's not off the table, but in order to do that, we have to extend service boundaries where we can provide it. And so we currently have a lot of projects that we need to do to upgrade our systems to serve what we have as boundaries.
Systems like that.
Yes. And so it's just a more complicated answer. It's not off the table, but we really should just be efficient with the land that we have in our new boundary now. And
No, it makes sense. I just was curious.
no, fair. All questions are good.
I just have a question because we're seeing all these roads going, from forward, it's gonna go up and around. So when you have the 50% trees for specifics and 30% trees for others, the roads, are they part of that consideration? Because you're obviously having to take all the trees out to put the road in.
And I'm glad you asked it. It does. So if it's a regional road, which like the JWP will be, those trees in that corridor don't count to the overall calculation of trees that you have to save 50% out of.
Okay. Well,
But the smaller like collector roads and local roads, you don't get to count those trees. Am I saying that correctly? You don't count those trees. You do count those trees, but you're still.
Yeah, okay. So that was my curiosity,
Yes.
was that, obviously you have to cut down trees. So when you're looking at the development overall, does that count in the figure in the percentages?
Yes. No, this is why this is such a hard presentation to do so quickly, because there's so much good stuff in there and so much.
Interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah. So kind of again, I'm not going to go into the details. I've kind of explained about the opportunity sites and the challenges, and you have copies of this. Okay, so further analysis to finish up the last overview is that the last is going to form the regional plan update by identifying areas that would most benefit from additional density and infill. So currently, the regional plan is looking at, they've done a huge exercise of doing different scenario, choosing exercises. There was a lot of public outreach where people provided input on where do we want to see our community grow? What do we value? How do we want to see it grow? And then So we're looking at the last and we're doing a lot of overlaying to see how those turned out. And the good news is that they're actually very much aligned. And that's good because it's good that we're seeing that where we see the opportunity from an actual data standpoint, that's aligned with where the community wants to see our community. So that's one challenge, almost eliminated, or I shouldn't say that, alleviated. And then it will also help us inform land use designations. It's also gonna, it is already starting to inform the code analysis project, so I'm not gonna go too much into that. Because I talk a lot about that during the code analysis project or process overview, so I'm just gonna move on and then you'll get that. Just a couple other things that came out of this. Again, it's gonna help provide specific locations where significant housing opportunities exist. It also underscores the importance of looking at parking strategies such as traffic demand management, specifically when we talk about our downtown area. If we really want to densify, and I want to be clear, when I say densify, it's like Flagstaff density. We're very limited, like talking mid-rises, and so it's not like scary. We're not talking Chicago density. But even to just get some mid-rises downtown, we need to figure out our parking situation, how to get people out of cars so that we don't have to require parking. The other thing is, and Nicole kind of touched on it with her update, is that this is just what we regulate. We've only looked at the environmental constraints that we regulate today, but we do recognize that there are a lot of other community issues, such as flood and fire, that we know we're going to have to grapple with. And so that might also impact the more so the code analysis, but it's just something to remember when we look at what lands are available. We are preempted by the state in a lot of different ways, and so that creates challenges. So we have to be creative of how we work around those types of things. And the other thing is that this is really a great opportunity to start aligning our regional plan and our code, our capital improvement plan. Ideally, those things would be informing each other. If the community is saying this is where we want to grow, then hopefully our infrastructure projects will start to focus on those areas to start to alleviate some of the cost for bringing infrastructure to a site. Because this is a community where development pays for itself. So if you need the water, sewer, you need the 4-lane highway, the developer pays for that. It's good for us because it keeps our taxes down, but it does mean that we're going to pay more on the back end because it's going to translate to higher housing costs. Okay, I'm going to pause. Before I do talk about the code analysis project, is there anything for clarity? And I want to be respectful of time.
Is there a number that we're looking for in terms of units of houses or population or?
There is, and specifically the housing plan calls out that we need about 8,000. And that's, it's not just people who are moving into our community. You have to think for every one of us that we have a child or two children, we would like them to stay in our community, and then we would like their children to stay. And so we're talking about our own growth, let alone what we're seeing from outside migration into our community.
When you say units, you don't necessarily mean 8,000 single family homes. You mean 8,000
bedrooms, like you, right?
Yeah, like apartment complexes.
Exactly.
We hope they don't come as a single family dwelling.
And if they do, they better be very tiny.
Yeah.
Little single family.
Some of these apartment complexes need to be putting trees where they're not having them.
And the regional plan really talks more about those population trends that we're looking for. We always do, just really quickly. You typically look at a low growth scenario, a medium, and a high, but you usually plan for about that medium growth, knowing that things are to change.
Where in the plan are they doing anything relative to concept of economic structure? By that I'm thinking about that there was some allegations made that there's sections of the town that are now being kind of placed in a notion that lower socioeconomic structure will be here and here and here. So this will be the
creating like lower income.
Yes, exactly.
I'm
going to say that.
I think the next couple slides, I think we're going to get to a little bit of what you're talking about. So why don't I go through this, and then after you see these, I think it might help you. But the policy of the regional plan, or the housing plan, is that we want all types of housing.
Mhm.
And we want it spread across. So a lot of times we want affordable housing projects with all housing projects, like
Right.
even if it's just putting in different affordable units, so that
Right.
it's spread across the
Right.
community and not. There's other things at play that translate though to it being more attractive to certain areas. Okay, so the code analysis project, why are we doing it? So the city has really bold and wonderful plans and policies. And this is kind of like the top graphic shows what we plan and what we think we want, you know, this is what we're trying to achieve. Our codes aren't functioning as an effective tool for that. And part of that problem is just that they've been written over a period of decades under different contexts, with different priorities. And so they're not always working in the same direction. We have a declared housing emergency and we have declared climate emergency that the council just recently declared both of those in 2020 and 2021 respectively. We need to make sure our codes, and when I say codes, I'm not just talking about zoning, all development codes are actually moving in that same direction. And we're seeing that that's not really what's happening, that they're piecemealed, and so that they're trying to achieve too many different things and not achieving enough of what we really are trying to. And so that kind of that bottom graphic is what you're really getting, but that's not really what we want. So the code analysis is being done in 3 different processes, 3 different phases. And so we're here today with the diagnostics. So the first one, so for the new commissioners, you were very lucky because you're getting this for the first time and you get to see this team more times as we go through the progression. So right now, we're just really looking at the barriers. Where are the barriers through our codes, processes, and plans? And then we will start to develop concepts and approaches of how do we start to remove those barriers. We'll be vetting those with the public. Mostly the boards and commissions, housing and sustainability commissions, transportation commission, planning and zoning and council, and then further defining those concepts that we kind of vet through these, you guys, to specific code up and recommendations. So kind of right now, we're at the point of just distilling all the different plans that really touch the 2 areas of housing and climate. High occupancy housing, the housing plan, of course, the regional plan, transit on the move, or Flagstaff on the move is just the transit plan, active transportation, and the climate. I always call it the wrong one. Carbon neutrality plan. And kind of distilling those down to the key outcomes impacted by code. So those outcomes are really the focus of the goals that these plans are trying to achieve. So we wanted to see how is the code helping those or getting in the way of those. So the scope of the code analysis looked at multiple codes. And then within the zoning code, we have an affordable, like it's not just looking at the zoning code, but we have affordable housing incentive and a residential sustainable building incentives. And those are being looked at, as well as our development review process. Where can we streamline things? Where can we be more efficient? And then also our different manuals. So for instance, traffic impact analysis, which every development is going to require. Right now, it doesn't really consider transportation, other modes of transportation. So we need to look at that to make sure that we're moving in the direction of the big shift as we look at our transportation model. And then there's also an incentive policy for affordable housing that's being looked at. And the reason why those things are specifically being looked at, those incentives, are because people aren't using them. So that means that we like where. And then the mountain line design guidelines for transit facilities. So quickly just doing a review of all those, talking to the city staff that implement them to understand where staff can tell you it's amazing. They all have spreadsheets. They know exactly where kind of those little hiccups are. So they were a wealth of information. And then our development stakeholders, the people who are using our codes, we need to know from their perspective what are the barriers and challenges. So the developers, the engineers, and architects, and then we also invited folks who are on the financing side of those to understand how some of these codes might be impacting the ability for financing. And then they looked at 7 actual projects that we've already run so that they could start looking at potential code changes to those. So some of the key findings, this is going to be kind of just setting the stage, but this really ties back to the code analysis project and kind of the why we did the last for like this part of this. So this is kind of a map of where is the building land and what zones have the most capacity for new housing. So again, most of the acreage that we have open for redevelopment is that rural residential and estate, which is that lowest density. We have 82 acres of R1 or single family residence. And then, some of the other zoning districts have some distribution as well. So then where does the regional plan call for new housing to be prioritized to meet both our climate and our housing goals? Well, it really calls for infill development in existing neighborhoods. So the zoning district in those is our commercial. So we need to make sure we're looking at our commercial zoning district to understand how do we get the maximum density that we can. And then also medium and high density zones, the MR and the HR are important to those existing neighborhoods and getting that infill. So we need to make sure that that zoning is achieving the density that it's trying to.
What does infill mean? You're saying infill.
Infill is typically where you have already like a built area, so like town site, like our downtown area. It's already developed, but you start to see vacant lots, houses get.
Yeah, banks and zoning parking lots there.
Yes, or it could be more housing. It could be that one of the little cottages downtown is removed and a duplex is put in, right? Like that's infill development. Thank you. You're welcome. And thank you for the question. And where does it call for new housing? So that's that development. So I don't have the map, but when you look at where it's, if I were to take those opportunity sites and put them in the circles on this map, they actually align really well, which is really good. It goes back to where we did the exercise with the community. They kind of told us where they want to see that development. And that's where the opportunity sites came up. But again, that's that area that's zoned rural residential and estate. Like keep emphasizing that. Because we will not achieve our goals of 8,000 units if we develop out at 1 unit per acre. Another problem is that another challenge is that those are unsubdivided areas. So they haven't gone through the subdivision process, which creates the individual lots that have been sold and developed for housing. And so how does that process keep up with the needs of our housing demands? And then when rezoning occurs, how do we make sure that new development will meet housing and climate goals? It's a question we need to really grapple with. So I think this is kind of to what you were just asking. So one of the things we also needed to acknowledge and to understand is where are the households that are vulnerable to displacement and housing production doesn't keep up. And so this map looked at the indicators of vulnerability with the indicators of demographic and housing market change to understand where we are seeing displacement now and at what stage is it occurring. So is it early, mid, or late? And one of the biggest things that's been proven is that one of the preventions for housing displacement is the production of more housing. So we need to make sure that new housing supply is both needed in those vulnerable areas because that's also where the higher density is. But we also need to make sure that we're opening up those other areas for new development to help take those pressure off of those neighborhoods that are feeling the pressure right now. Other entities. I don't, but I think I'm close.
Okay, I think you have a couple.
Okay.
But she has so much more to say.
I know. I'm gonna zip through all this. You have it. So a lot of that tells us that we really need to look at our zoning process and our subdivision process. We need to make the zoning process one that is less cumbersome and complicated. Because if right now, the way the process is it's discouraging people to come in and upzone their property, so they're developing by right. So we need to figure out how do we.
I didn't hear the word after you said they're developing by what?
By right, and by right means what you're entitled. So as every zoning designation, there are things that you are permitted to do by right. That means you don't have, you still.
My land if I could do if I want to.
Yeah, but you still have to follow the design standards, building code, but you don't have to go to planning and zoning commission and ask for a conditional use permit. And you don't have to go through the process of rezoning the property. People are not, we've found that it's not economically compelling to use our affordable housing and our sustainable building incentives. So we need to figure out how do we make the economics of those incentives work so that people actually will use them. resource production, it's not optimized to balance our housing production goals with our environmental goals. We look at our parking minimums and then high occupancy housing. And then kind of the exercise also told us what zones we need to look at. I'm gonna, this just goes more on about the zoning map amendment and subdivision. I've talked a lot about that. Here's an example of what we're talking about with zoning districts. So, and when the consultant team looked at our zoning districts and certain projects, so that max density is 6. No matter how they did it, they were only able to get a maximum density of 4.7. That means something isn't working in our code, and we need to figure out how do we fix whatever is stopping us from achieving that max density so we can at least achieve that. This slide is just kind of go in a little bit more of that, but that R1 density is inconsistent with our city's climate goals. So we need to make sure, and specifically because in order to get transit supportive development, that density, and that's when we start talking about traffic demand management and getting people out of their cars and using alternative modes of transportation. And single family residential, we need to not get 6, we need to get 8 to 15 people units per acre in order to start to support that type of development. So, and that's your guys' goal, and we're trying to help. And then it's just restricting us from getting that missing middle. The missing middle is, we talk about affordable housing, we talk about the high-end housing, but there's something in between for our workforce housing. And when we're artificially inducing the housing to be larger and incentivizing a larger footprint, that also means a larger cost. So we need to figure out how do we get the regulations right size to get higher density for and smaller houses actually and smaller units to achieve a smaller cost. And that goes to the affordability. So some more slides about that. Resource protection. Commercial codes, we need to be able to maximize the density there. Again, minimum parking requirements, and I'm sorry I'm flying through there. This is just an example of how the affordable housing incentives are not economically viable. So a good graphic to show that rate of return, and it's not proving to be enough of a rate of return to have people to use them. Sustainable building incentives. Really, it's looking like features such as water resource protection and electric vehicle charging may be more appropriate to require for most developments. All electric buildings may be the most challenging to provide, but are essential to our carbon challenge goals. And the density bonus that's permitted as part of that incentive is just not, again, compelling enough. How do we incentivize that? We want to make sure that we're being considerate of other community goals and policies and priorities. So then we get into the findings, and I've talked a lot about this. One challenge to talk about when we talk about needing to bring new development sites and bringing in that infrastructure with every large development and with any rezone, again, development pays for itself. So you're required to do a water sewer impact, and that's going to tell you, are the pipes that exist, are they big enough? Do they exist? If they exist, are they big enough to support your development? And if they're not, then you need to pay for those upgrades. Same with the traffic impact analysis. If you don't have the rights of way or the street widths, or you have to bring that in. The process is also kind of long and it's unpredictable, and that has challenges for people again wanting to come in and do that rezone process that's where they really get triggered, especially with most of our land being that R and ER. We just overall have an over-reliance on individual projects to fund our transportation infrastructure. And so we really need to also start to consider more reliable funds, such as like development impact fees. We also are requiring, in a lot of people's opinion, and what we're seeing as it relates to not getting the density is wide streets than maybe are necessary. We might want to look at how support our community with more narrow streets, while also maintaining health and safety for I've talked about the water sewer, transportation access, kind of talked on that. We're designing our streets very large to provide for off-street parking, but then there's, 5 months out of the year that you can't use that. So then we're still kind of creating a situation where putting parking on their sites. It's an inefficient use of land. And then just some other things. trying to make sure I don't skip out too much. Fire code, kind of talking about that fire access. I think for this group, just to kind of end on with the building code, because this is, I think, where we really start to talk about sustainability. We have a misalignment between our stakeholders and city goals. It's from our development community. Sustainability is seen as nice to have, but it's expensive and not critical. So how do we either educate them that it's not, or if there is truth to that, how do we maybe find funding sources that can help alleviate those costs? We really need to elevate building performance beyond the code, energy and water efficiency, but there's no path to carbon neutrality without renewable energy, and we really need to focus on decarbonization of our grid. So again, this is gonna, from the regional plan, the cap, and then this graphic just shows how the two projects are moving along, and then some key dates. And that's it. And I'm sorry, I think I did take about 5 more minutes. Thank
If anyone has any more questions, feel free to reach out to me and I can provide Michelle's email as well.
Okay. Because we've had this in our agenda all along, you know that, so we were so helpful.
Good. And then once you have the reports, that will be even more. So as this, so what we'll do is we'll get the link out to you, or we'll get it out to Tia, we'll send it out to you. And then once we give you those links to the larger reports, we'll ask that you try to get us comments back by the 16th before we go to city council. Then we'll consolidate all the comments that we received from these different commission meetings, and we will finalize the last report. And then we will, the diagnosis part of the cap, we will kind of put that into there and finalize that. But I want to reiterate, that's not the end of the cap and not the end of when you're going to see us, because we will be here throughout this process. Thank you.
We can email her questions that she'll send to you.
Thank you, Tia. Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the work you're doing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's
Huge
amazing.
job.
I'm happy to have the most amazing team working with that. Thank you.
There's 61 pages of report. That was impressive.
Yeah. Next up is Jenna Ortega from the Sustainability Office. My engagement here to talk about the Flagstaff Sustainability Office equity work and introduce the new equity assessment tool.
Hi, everyone. Let me go ahead.
And I just wanted to check in, were you here just to listen in or for a specific agenda item?
Just listening. I just moved here. Wanted to see.
Awesome.
Good title on your shirt. Goes
Welcome.
on. That's really cool.
They just did our house.
Oh, Tom.
Got scheduled to do it.
Cozy Gulch. What do you put in?
So I was energy auditor, HVAC company, insulation, organization.
Sorry, guys.
We'll see. Oh, they're working. Maybe it'll come up in a second.
Or it wasn't attached to the agenda.
It says on there, equity assessment.
The different
Oh, I'm sorry.
presentation and then the tools.
That's right.
No, we'll pull that up later.
That's right.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to be efficient. Do my job.
You're doing great. So, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all tonight. Some new faces. Forward to getting to know you all. CSI, my name is Jenna Ortega. I work in the Sustainability Office. I'm on our climate team. And so most of my work is, I say community work. I don't get out into the community as much as I like. I do a lot of work behind my computer on community projects, as most of us in the city do. So I have a handful of advisory groups, so community advisory groups, kind of similar to what you all do. Some grant programs, like our HEPA program, our flood prevention program, working with coalitions and just trying to build relationships. So I'm here tonight to share some information on the efforts that our office, the Sustainability Office, is doing to really try to be active in integrating equity into our work. So to start our conversation tonight, I want to kind of acknowledge the depth of equity work and make sure we establish what I like to call a safe space. Then we'll talk about equity, why it's important, and then I will kind of give you a brief introduction to our office's plan to really try to do better when it comes to equity. And then to wrap it up, I will share a tool that we are going to use. Jump in anytime. I might talk fast. The beginning will be a little bit more kind of talking a lot on the slides. As we get towards the end, it'll be a little quicker and broken down. So equity work is hard. It can lead to difficult conversations. It's also, a journey, and the goal is for everyone to move forward, but most importantly, to move forward as a community towards equitable outcomes. So there's a need to center equity in our conversations, but to do so with empathy and seeking to understand others and their experiences and their perceptions. So on this slide, these are just some guidelines that I like to use during this work. You can kind of zip through them, but really it's about respect, meeting people where they are, taking care of yourselves as well. These conversations can trigger trauma. And then, this requires being open to new information, exploring and learning and all that good stuff. So before I ever do any equity work, I just try to acknowledge that a lot of different people are in the room. We come from different places, different backgrounds, and that we will just come in this together, lean into our discomfort at times, and know that things might get messy. And I think the best rule is if you ever need to challenge something, make sure you are challenging the idea and not the person. I grab my ladder as well. All right, so what is equity? And my first disclaimer is I am not an expert in equity. I am constantly learning, trying to do better at acknowledging my privilege and the power imbalances that I remain to be a part of. So with that, so I like to think of equity being correcting broken systems in order to eliminate outcomes that are based on identity. And in order to do so, this requires intentional action in order to really be just when we are distributing resources, how we prioritize people in the programs that we offer, and really addressing the system. So it's a lot of systems change work. And it's really about people starting from different places. And so we need to consider that in our work, that not everyone has the same access to everything. And so equity requires a lot of things. I've listed out a few of them. And the first one being accountability. And I think of that, since I work for the government, that I am accountable to the community. And without equity, accountability to the community as a whole is not possible. So another one is prioritizing people, and specifically people who have been historically and are still currently marginalized, underserved, underrepresented. And so if we're not intentionally designing to ensure equity, there's a good chance that we are designing for inequity if we're not being very intentional with including equity. And equity requires acknowledgement. Inequities do not arise on their own. People have created the systems which we live in, many of which perpetuate inequity. This is sometimes intentional and often unintentional. Therefore, we have to be very intentional about our actions and how we are designing programs that serve the community. In addition, I don't think it's up there, but it also requires regular evaluation. It's an ongoing process, and transparency, and just kind of that growth mindset and a culture of not being afraid to try to improve your work. And so equity is deeply intertwined with climate change. We know those that contribute the least to climate change are forced to suffer the greatest impacts from climate change. We also know that racial inequities are not new. They have been created and sustained over time. The causes are complex, linked to a lot of historical and ongoing forms of oppression. And so in climate justice work, we are taught to lead with race, and that is just to always keep in mind that race, and this is across North America, is the leading indicator for disparity. So the other reason we lead with race is, this sounds simple, I guess, but it's because we don't want to forget about race. And so that's that kind of like race blind approach. And that leads to kind of pretending racism doesn't still exist and isn't systemic in our society. And so another big reason is the Flagstaff carbon neutrality plan. And I have two things up there directly from the plan. And in our carbon neutrality plan, we have stated as an overarching goal that we're going to address climate change in a manner that prioritizes those who are most impacted, and to ensure the costs and the benefits of any of the things we are doing. So whether that's trying to reduce emissions or increase resilience, that's distributed equitably across the community. And so equity is not going to happen on its own. And really, as a government, I think about this a lot because it's our policies and our programs that can do both. They can cause further harm, but they can also help improve equity across our community. All right, so this is kind of getting into what our office has been having conversations on for a long time. And it's really to use an equity lens across our division as a means to insert equity into our decision-making processes in our program design, and really to evaluate everything we do across the board. And to keep in mind that intention is not the same as impact. Everyone across the city that I've met has great intentions. We all do, but that doesn't mean we are always creating the impact that we intend to create. And so just kind of remembering that how we do our work is just as important, if not more important, than the work we do. So this is a lot of goals we have. And, you know, one of the biggest ones is just growth across our team in having these hard conversations and sharing knowledge with each other and gaining confidence to have these conversations within the community. We want to do better at collecting data about our work, and then to identify if there are inequities in our policies and programs and our practices, and find ways where we can do good change and make improvements. And it's about accountability again. And so, you know, I like this kind of enhance the things that are leading to equity and eliminate the things that are not. And hopefully that very last one, I can't say if it'll happen, but to really kind of get momentum for equity work across the city of Flagstaff as a whole. And so I had to, since it's been serious so far, I had to get some more fun graphics in here to lighten up the room. So these are just kind of 4 phases, I guess you could call them, of what we're kind of calling our equity plan. And when I say equity plan, it is not, you know, it's a one-page thing.
Yeah.
It's not a written out plan by any means. It's just our plan. In the city, yeah, I guess there's two different ways to define plan. We are not doing the formal way at the moment. And so I'll go through these real quick, just to give you kind of a brief understanding of hopefully the work that you will continue to see from us. And so the first one is a diagnosis. And so that is us just really taking that first step to recognize and acknowledge that our current practices may not be meeting the needs of everyone in our community. And so we need to acknowledge that racism is institutional, it's structural, it's been around for a long time, and that we have an obligation to identify any parts of our work that might be adding to that systemic racism that is throughout our community, local government, federal government, and the world. So we will not be able to address all the historic wrongs, but we can definitely acknowledge them as part of the process. And then really just that kind of second bullet point of doing it with humility, going back to that this work is hard, and people have in our office have worked so hard on so many things, and we're being critical, but with humility and towards healing. And so not to say that people don't work so hard across the city. And so our second phase, which we are entering right now, is to really use a tool to evaluate our policies and programs and practices in order to understand if they are perpetuating inequities. And then once we have some data collected, we will be able to analyze it as well as use it in the development of new policies and programs. And so this next stage is about strategies. And hopefully, this phase happens kind of throughout. It's not just, okay, we evaluated everything. Strategies will be part of every process. And we need these strategies in order to identify what resources we need. A lot of times we want our programs to be even better, but we might not have the funding to make it happen. And so kind of figuring out, like, do we need grants? Do we need funding? Do we need training, more trainings for our team? And then a very important step here is that we also need to do meaningful, deep engagement with the community in order to develop what strategies to use moving forward. And then we also need strategies to make sure that we are tracking our progress and measuring our progress so that we can see if we are making improvements over time. And then this last phase is implementation. So inequities aren't going to disappear on their own. So we're going to have to put in some work for you. I got really happy when I put that picture of Tia in right here earlier. So she's working hard. So that's why I put it there.
Is she being abused? Why is she?
I'm not sure.
Help Tia. Somebody's abusing Tia.
Watershed cleanup. It's fun. Okay, glad you're on that. So part of this is really developing an ongoing system of evaluation. So this work is never done, it's ongoing. So figuring out how we can keep doing better, including, building better partnerships within the community and what opportunities we can do to further increase equity in our work. And this also requires accountability. So making sure we are being accountable, we are being transparent, and really doing our best to increase access, remove barriers, and ensure equity in decision-making processes. So we're hoping that even as we start evaluating, we'll be able to make small changes along the way, but these kind of second phases, 3 and 4, are going to be for those kind of like bigger change that we're not just able to make when we catch them. And so There are a ton of tools out there. We spent a long time looking at tools that other cities use, that counties use, or states to kind of evaluate their work. After looking at a ton of them, we decided none of them met our needs. So we kind of built our own. But basically, when I say an equity tool, it's just something that's designed to make sure that you're considering equity in all these things, your decision making, your policies, your practice, your budget, your programs. It's both a product and a process, I guess. So it can be a piece of paper, but it's kind of this ongoing process that you are doing in order to make improvements as well. And so the one that we worked on is hopefully going to just kind of provide us with the structure that we need to kind of collect data, analyze it, and then see if we are making improvements. And so this is kind of a breakdown of the tool. We called it an equity assessment, not a super exciting name, but that's what we went with. And so it has 5 sections. We really wanted it to not be, again, this super long document that added a bunch of extra work to staff. So that, I think, was what was attached in the agenda. With just the questions, it's a page and a half, so it's not very long, but it does have a lot of great questions in there. And
Do you want us to fill them out?
So the plan is to hopefully go through it at the next meeting, and to evaluate our neighborhood sustainability grant using those questions.
Oh, that's interesting.
So today, yeah, sorry for not providing more of an introduction in person. Today was just to provide more background about why the Sustainability Office and why we believe the commission are interested in equity, and then to introduce the tool. So provide more of a background to introduce it because it's a lot to absorb.
Yeah, so I think just the last 5 slides are those sections. And so what I gave you all in the attachment is this. We as we have an equity working group at our office. We kept trying to do this, like trying out programs, and we kept realizing that we were like not answering the question. So we do have, which we'll provide you next time, one that is more in a table form and really forces you to answer each question because we kept not doing a good job when we were doing it this way. So this is kind of the more simplified version. It's still the same amount of questions, just in a different format to really help you make sure you are answering the question. And then one thing we also caught ourselves doing was not being specific. So we have kind of laid out some guidelines and the other ones to really think from an equity perspective when you are answering these questions. So the question of who is the intended audience? The answer might be all of Flagstaff, but in this assessment, it's really trying to break down from an equity perspective who you might be trying to reach with this program. So this could be people with low income, people of color, renters, kind of whoever you are trying to reach specifically besides just the community as a whole.
Neighborhood groups, et cetera.
Yeah, it could be anything, and or it could be, you know, neighborhood groups that are led by people of color might be.
Well,
Yep.
Most impacted, they're the ones that are lower income and people of color.
Yep.
It's all one thing.
And so the second section is really kind of about how you are empowering people. And so an example of this is, especially kind of for grant programs, like, are you providing funding upfront? Are you asking people to have enough money to cover the cost and get reimbursements later? Are you offering your programs in other languages? Just really things that empower people to be able to participate in the program or service. Another piece of this section I like is who's involved, and that's kind of including the planning phase. I know in government, a lot of times like we write something up and then we ask for input after it's done, and that doesn't do great for relationship or trust building in the community when you aren't kind of invited to the table to help say what you need as a community member instead of assuming that we as staff know what everybody in the community needs. The third is about benefits. And again, trying to think from kind of an equity lens, what the benefits of this specific program are. And then, you know, who's receiving them? Who's not receiving them? And sometimes you know, and sometimes you don't know. And so when you see kind of the table way, you can list out, you know, multiple benefits and then say who's receiving these, who's not. And so that's where kind of the table format helps you really get to add as many items as you want. And then our fourth one is about barriers. And so this is thinking about who might not have access to the service that you or the program that you are providing. And then what are you doing to hopefully reduce barriers? And then a lot of this is future looking too. So what can you do in the future to further reduce barriers? This section also includes unintended impacts, which is kind of a hard one we struggled with because a lot of times you don't know these unintentional impacts that you're causing. One example would be like if the city goes in and provides some free or partially funded like energy improvements to a home, like we make it more efficient, we do some things, and say that landowner, it's a renter that lives there, and then perhaps the homeowner raises the rent because now there's all these upgrades and it's higher, and then it's no longer affordable for that renter and they get displaced. So that would be a unintentional impact of some of the work that we do. I think I am about done. Our last section is just about accountability. So as part of this last one, you kind of go through each of the 4 sections and name out some mechanisms to hold yourself kind of accountable in those sections, and whether that's like setting goals or reminders to check back in, or really like asking for funding for it, applying for a grant. Like, what are you going to do to make those improvements that you listed on there? And that's it.
So,
Any questions?
yeah, I mean, what kind of like census or demographic data do we have to know, you know, who lives here and what groups are potentially represented and that sort of thing? I mean, do we have a database that we can review to see?
We do. Genevieve probably knows more about census data than I do. And so do you want to share what we have?
I'll do my best. So what's tricky with Flagstaff is because it's a small community, our census tracts cover more than one neighborhood. And so we do have census data, and there's the decennial census, and then there's the American Community Survey that's ongoing every year. And the American Community Survey has a lot more detailed questions than the 10-year census. So basic demographic questions, we get that from the census, but it is challenging because, again, we have a lot of neighborhoods in Flagstaff, and census tracts will cover more than one neighborhood, or maybe one neighborhood might be split between 2 tracts. There are, there's like the census tract, then there's the block group, and then there's the block level. And you do get, like those areas are smaller geographic areas, but then there's less data. Within the smaller the area, there's less data. So I think we do the best that we can with our data. But I think that shows the need for not just relying on census data, and especially like local community partners that know the neighborhoods and the areas that they're working in and what those needs are. And so census data is useful, but it's not the only tool, and nor should it be.
So the idea behind this is we're going to be looking at the sustainability grants relative to rubrics and setting up some kind of priorities that will support equity so that it doesn't all go to, let's say the person who got the PhD can write a good grant as opposed to it. That's what we're talking about. is that right?
Yeah, and I am trying to think about what resources I can compile and information and compile for the next meeting. Some suggestions I'm thinking of is just like a pure list, and Commissioner Conkle has a question, like a pure list of all the people that have received it in the last 5 years. And then maybe a map of by neighborhood, project by neighborhood, since we have the physical addresses.
And we have the demographic relative to that neighborhood. That's the whole point, is that you have a demographic that says,
We put that up.
well, you have a,
Well,
well,
you can,
if you're
yeah,
trying to do an evaluation relative to the equity, you want to be able to look at the neighborhood and the structure, and we don't want to do that notion we talked about before, where people are, where it slants negatively. We say, oh, well, you know, we have to, because people of color are live in this neighborhood, that says something about that neighborhood. That what we need to do is be looking at what we're doing in terms of supporting the equity in it. And possibly write maybe something for the future relative to rubrics that support that kind of outcome with the sustainability grants. Is that right?
Like this integrating in the scoring.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. There's probably a ton of ideas like that.
That's
And
what
yeah,
I'm kind of asking why we're going this way, and I'm assuming that's what we're looking at, is ways to improve what we're doing now. Is that right?
Yes, and sorry, I apologize, since you weren't at the last meeting,
Yes, I was.
oh, you were. You
and,
were.
and I don't think it
Yes, I
has
was.
to be.
We said goodbye and we ate snacks.
That's
Our
true,
last
that's
meeting.
true. I don't think it has to be to necessarily like improve, but I think it's to kind of get a baseline, at least how I've used it in my programs of who am I serving now? And then
Right.
like,
But this whole point is for us to look at ourselves. I mean, that's
It
the whole
is.
point, right?
Yeah,
That's
so-
why this 30-minute presentation is, I think, is valuable. to
See
look at ourselves.
what we're doing well and areas for.
I'm offensive that nobody remembers what I'm here. Oh, no, you know I'm gonna be vocal. You can tell already, right?
Okay, Commissioner Conkle, go ahead, please.
You changed your hair since we last saw you.
Oh, I just took my braid out. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm really excited to do this. I think it'll be really insightful for us with their neighborhood sustainability grants. Looking at the categories of the tool, and one thing that I think is really important, and I'm trying to kind of figure out if it fits into here and how it fits into here, is transparency. So how are we being transparent in terms of what we're requesting and how we're distributing funding? Do you think that fits into the accountability category, or, and if not, do you think there's an opportunity for us to add that into the assessment?
absolutely. So I think, I'm trying to read. Absolutely. So I forgot to mention that like this, we change this every time we've tried to do a program. So this is not like a set in stone. And we imagine every time we evaluate a different program through it, that there are going to be edits and different needs. So I love transparency, and especially when it comes to, I don't want to say giving away, but giving away money to the community. That
Awarding money.
It's awarding. Thank you for that correction. So yes, let's definitely figure out if it fits in there, and if not, let's add it in there. Thank you so much for that.
Perfect.
If the other commissioners have anything else or any other information they want me to prepare for next time. And if you think of something later, you can totally email me up until the day of the next meeting.
Thank you.
Well, the last grants that went out, were any of those be described as inequitable or, you know, could have been better purposed or?
I think it's what, at least how I'm envisioning this, like possibly going is like, it's less about like the grant projects themselves, because we have limited control. I mean, we can guide in the application materials, But, something specifically is like, how are we doing outreach about it? Like, if we're just doing social media, for example, I can know from our social media analytics exactly who our audience is on social media, like their age and demographics, or like at least age and gender.
Well, one of the questions could well be, how is this particular project going to support and impact people who are presently the most.
Oh, one of the applications.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I think that is one area that we honestly do kind of do okay, because we do ask about those kind of community questions,
Yes.
like, does this support a underserved community?
Right.
Is it engaging?
That's
But
one of the points in the rubric. But it might help if you give a little more extra points for
Yeah.
that, on the way into that, so.
Commissioner Conkle?
Yeah, to that point about like the projects themselves, a couple of years ago, I don't remember if we did it this last round or not, in terms of the project categories. So for our new folks, we have our grant applicants choose a specific category that their project falls under. And in the past, we gave like 1 additional point to projects in certain categories because we weren't getting very many applicants in those categories. So to kind of bolster their score by 1 extra point. So we might be able to take a look at last grant round, how many projects were funded in the different categories, and if there is an equity question related to, funding so many projects in food, for example, compared to opportunities to fund projects in other areas. Just an idea if we wanted to take a look at, not the exact project themselves, but the distribution of funding across types of projects in an equitable way.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and I think that one single point that raised for some of those projects was taken out this year, because at least the reasoning that I had seen was about elevating for like carbon neutrality goals. And then we ended up asking a question of each of them about how they aligned with our carbon neutrality plan. So I think that is a great thing to reevaluate. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions you can email me with? All right, now we're going to go into regional planning and the sustainability commission's possible involvement, and what we hope is their involvement.
Do we have to dress up like a squirrel?
You get to.
No, I'm not dressing up like any squirrel. Who am I picking up garbage? I'm good with that. I do that a lot.
Genevieve for 3.
Yeah, thanks, Tia. Hi, everyone. I'm Genevieve. I am in the sustainability office too, but I used to be in planning with Michelle and Tiffany here before. So kind of wanting to give you all just the introduction to the regional plan and opportunity to get involved. Yeah, let me share my screen. And before I start, I know Michelle mentioned the regional plan quite a bit in her presentation on the code analysis, land availability and suitability study, but prior to that, is anyone familiar with the regional plan, what it does, where we are in the process? Not really. Okay,
Sort of.
Okay,
Just sort of, well, maybe.
Sort of maybe. Okay, so we'll just do a real quick overview. So basically Flagstaff has a regional plan. Right now it's the regional plan 2030. So that's the current regional plan. And basically the intent of the regional plan is to guide Flagstaff's growth through the planning horizon. So we're actually in the process of updating it right now. And the planning horizon is 2045. It's a multi-year process. We're kind of in the middle of it. It is going to be going out. It's being written right now. There's a regional plan committee. It's going out for public, broader public input later this year, but there are lots of opportunities for public input now. So I just want to show you a little bit about it. So yeah, it's pretty important. There's a big website that has lots of information. So I don't know, Tia, if you would mind sending this out to the commission afterward. So basically, whenever a project comes in so Michelle talked about rezoning. So when there's a project and a piece of land and they want to change the zoning designation, they want to rezone, in order for that to be approved, it has to comply with the goals and policies of the regional plan. So basically, that's how this most effectively guides growth in Flagstaff, but it also kind of identifies where we want to go as a community. So, and it will be ratified by the voters, I think in 2026, or maybe it's 2025. Again, it's a big process, but
The 2030 plan will be ratified in 2025.
the 2045.
Oh, 45, okay.
Yeah, so right now we're out to 2030.
Not the
That
2030
one,
plan.
I'm kind of jumping all over the place, so I hope you don't mind. It's after 6 o'clock. on a Thursday. So the 2030 plan that we currently have was ratified in 2014. So if anyone was in Flagstaff in 2014, basically 2012 through 2014 approximately, that process happened at that time. So now it's being updated about 10 years later. And our planning horizon is to 2045. So there is a regional plan committee, and they meet about once or twice a month. And right now they are working on reviewing chapters. So this is the regional plan has a bunch of different chapters. So the next meeting is going to be reviewing the water and the energy chapters. There are other chapters on land use, transportation, public safety, open spaces, resource stewardship and conservation. There's a couple others. So basically they have these topical chapters and each one of them has goals, some like background information, then goals and policies to kind of help the city and partners implement the regional plan. And they're taken into consideration when a piece of land is under a rezoning consideration. So, okay, so that's a little bit scattered overarching thing of the regional plan. Before I go on, does anyone have any questions about the regional plan
How close are we to matching what was planned
from 2030?
for 2030 from 2014 or
Yeah.
15?
That's a good question. So yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of, so the 2030 plan had a bunch of things called activity centers where they anticipated higher intensity growth. Some of those have played out and some of them have not. So, and that was, a lot has changed since 2014. And I will say that for the next plan, a big part of it has been scenario planning. So looking at how things could change and trying to use that to think about the kind of community that, like I said, residents want it to grow into be. So I guess,
So for example, nothing in that plan could have speculated that the mall would start having lesser and lesser usage. So they have.
you know, it's a higher level than that. It's really mostly a land use plan. So it's a higher level than that. So I guess to answer your question, the purpose of the regional plan is not to be prescriptive that the whole Flagstaff will develop exactly how it says, but it's meant to guide as a guide because there's always things that we can't anticipate. There's lots of factors.
Hopes and dreams.
But yeah, it's meant to guide. And I will add, yeah, so it's meant to guide growth, but again, it's never going to be exact.
Well, yeah, I'm just curious because you're planning out that much further again, because things change so radically and quickly that
Yeah.
having 15-year plans, I mean, nice, but
But the point is the plan doesn't direct who's gonna buy a piece of land, and what they're gonna do with it. I mean, that's the coding thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, we love the idea of having blah, 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 blah. but-
one acre lots
Yes, but we can't
can't afford it.
control it.
Well, yeah, it's a guiding document. So, yeah. Yeah, it's a guiding document. There's a lot of, growth happens on, someone buys land, they want to develop it. Do they go for rezoning? So there's lots of actors. But basically it's supposed to guide growth. It's supposed to be updated every 10 years. So that's why
Is it something that departmentally, the city departments review? For example, you guys look at it when you're looking at things you're doing with sustainability, that you look at the point.
Well, we look at the plan mostly when a parcel comes in to be rezoned.
Oh, okay, so it's really all about zoning.
Yeah, that's the most important. Like I would say.
Back to that coding thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's primarily guides land use and transportation, but it is really important for setting the direction where we want to go. So that's why there's also energy chapters, water chapters, other topics, and there are requirements by state law. So there's a lot in it. I feel like I'm not doing it. There's so much in it. It's really hard to describe, but Tia's going to send out the website, and it's a really good website. There's a lot of good information on it. So I would say take what I'm saying now as a very high level overview, and definitely please jump in and read the website because there's a lot of good stuff on it.
So I know that the Sustainability Commission has been asked to get involved specifically with the energy chapters and the growth and land use chapters. For something like the energy chapter, what kind of basic stuff will they be expecting to see come out of that chapter as it relates to like land use and?
Yeah, so thanks, Tia. So that's really why I'm here tonight, is to kind of let you all know how you as a committee can plug into this process. So I'll get to your question in just a sec. So yes, the Regional Plan Committee, their next meeting is April 10th. On April 3rd, they're gonna send out a draft of the energy chapter as well as the water chapter. So what Tia and I would like to know is if we have up to 3 commissioners who are interested in reading definitely the energy chapter and land use chapter. Other chapters may be optional, so you can work with you and I can work with you on that. But basically to review the chapters before the regional plan committee meeting, get together, figure out what your general comments are, and then be prepared to have at least one of you attend the regional plan committee meeting to provide comments as the Sustainability Commission. So you have to make sure you're on the page, in that same page, and that you feel like you can represent the commission in your comments. Yeah, so that's the ask right now. So the first one's the energy chapter. So again, it's going to come out on April 3rd. So that's next Wednesday. So you have a week between getting a draft, being prepared to make comments.
And
just the schedule
about is the draft?
Well, it's over 10 pages right now. It's going to be shorter than that, but it's so there's still some internal staff editing that's happening right now. But basically, so regional plan again is a land use plan. So where energy intersects with land use and transportation is basically where the plan is. And I'm still working with Sarah, and so are lots of folks, Sarah in comprehensive planning, to get it into a good place to go out. So once I actually have a good idea of what is going to be in the draft that goes out, I'll be able to answer that question. But basically, so I can follow up once we.
What time generally do they meet during the day? I mean, if someone's
So they're-
working, can they not go?
Yeah, start at 6. Ideally, they go 6 to 8. I will tell you, it'll probably be later. You don't have to stay for the whole meeting, but it would be great to have the Sustainability Commission comments on the plan. So, and I feel like, for whoever does want to volunteer to do that, we can meet up and I can kind of walk you through the process in a little bit more detail than right now. So I'm just trying to.
Yeah, is my Commissioner Wolkowinski or Vice Chair Wolkowinski?
Hey, I just wanted to say that I'm definitely interested in participating in that process. I don't necessarily want to volunteer without speaking to whatever working group we appoint to go speak on behalf of the commission. But I am interested in reviewing and helping formulate our group response.
So what you're envisioning is that two or three of us would read it, sit down with you so we get more information about it. And then one of us would go to we dialogue about what our opinion might be. And then one of us would go to this general meeting. And in that representation, though, there will only be 3 of us there, we're representing the 6 or 8 on the commission.
Yeah, so I want to make sure we'd have to, if you had a quorum, we have to post that. So
Right.
that's where the 3 people come.
And technically, the reason there's a vote on the agenda today is that a subcommittee needs to be appointed to be able to speak on behalf of the commission.
So the letter that was done. Yeah.
Well, technically, weird technicalities, it was a working group, slightly less formal. And then the working group was able to bring the language to discuss and vote on last time, whereas there's not time to do that. Because the next commission meeting's after the energy and water meeting. So the subcommittee, which is more formal, and I will have to brush up on I've never overseen or helped run a subcommittee either. But I think it has to follow the open meeting laws a little bit more, given the kind of powers that the commission gives them, if that makes sense.
So we probably have to make a motion to vote on today about that subcommittee being empowered so that we can just go from there.
Exactly. So yeah, we would like to know if there's 1 or 2 other people interested, and and has the capacity realistically, because it is a turnaround. You'll read that about 10 pages or so, and then ideally come together and meet to bring your comments together before the 10th, or even if it was on the 10th before the meeting, like whenever worked for you. And then either some person from the subcommittee can go to that meeting, or all subcommittee members can go. So, yeah.
I'm interested in doing that.
Okay. Thank you.
I would be.
Okay. Okay. We have our 3.
Oh,
Okay.
3.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much. Yes, we do. Yeah. So, just make sure.
And this is Wednesday, so.
Do I have a motion to appoint the subcommittee with Commissioner Lammy, Vice Chair Wilkowinski, and Commissioner Metzger?
Are we allowed to make the motion if we're on the committee?
Sure.
All right, I need the name of subcommittee. You move, then we don't have to worry about the conflict of interest.
I volunteer you guys.
All right, I hear a motion from Commissioner Skurlock. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. And again,
I'm not sure how many
motion
people are at the
is
meeting.
to create a subcommittee. If there are no objections, we'll adopt the motion. Yeah. Motion to create a subcommittee. Hearing no objections, the motion to create the subcommittee to work on the regional planning chapters as they come out, specifically the energy and land use and growth, and any others they feel so inclined to work on, is adopted. And I will be in touch with those 3 members with more information, and to the full commission. You are still welcome as individuals to get involved. You just can't speak on behalf of the commission. So,
Good to know.
yep, and that involvement could include either attending the meeting or submitting written comments after the chapter is released, watching the meeting after the fact, and providing written comments. So there's a few other ways as individuals to get involved as well.
Yeah, can I just want to do one thing first. So, looking forward to working with everyone who's on the committee, and Tia and I will work with you to get you up to speed and just go over the process. But for everyone, I just want to let you know, so on the regional plan committee, there are drafts of past chapters that have been written. There's only 2 that have gone to the regional plan committee, but there'll probably be about 10. So we can just keep you updated. The subcommittee can also keep updated, but you can be as involved as you want to. And then if you do want to go and represent yourself as individuals, the regional plan committee meetings are open. And you can make comments virtually or in person. Yeah, thank you to those who volunteered, and please do take a look. There's so much on the regional plan. It's such an important document. There's so much going on that I did not do it justice in my presentation. So please take a look if you want to find out more.
Well, you created interest. You have to remember that.
I did.
3 of you are willing to step up and do it.
Yes.
It's
All
all
right.
right.
Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. All right, the last thing on the agenda, because we moved item E up to the beginning, it's just the announcement of upcoming chair elections. So they're not happening today, but I just wanted to introduce the chair role. Oh, and we are over time, so I'm going to be super quick. Share my screen. Okay, so yeah, we don't have a chair. Our chair turned out and it is no longer on the commission. What does the chair do? They set the meeting agenda with me prior to the meeting. And then is the presiding officer that runs the meeting. So you'll recognize members to speak and the order of speaking, lead agenda discussions, and asks for motions and announces the outcomes of motion. I've been using this Robert's Rules of Order cheat sheet today that
You gave to all of us when we first started.
yeah.
I haven't, no.
I
I'm flying blind.
Well, I thought she gave them to us, she wanted us to be in control of this. Just right.
And then
Now that she's met you, you're gonna get one.
And then the commission terms are for 2 years. And the time commitment is really just like 30 minutes to an hour extra each month outside of meetings to set the agenda. And then how our chair's elected, just commissioners elect their chair and vice chair by motion needs to select someone as the chair for the meeting. So my ask and Vice Chair Wilkowski's ask to create this agenda item is that between now and the next meeting, please email me if you have any interest in being chair so I can bring that interest to the next meeting. We don't have to put anyone awkwardly on.
Did our vice chair nominate her? Are you doing this, vice chair? Where are you?
She has hopped off.
Conveniently.
I'll let you know that she has expressed interest.
She has?
Yeah. But I know she would be welcome and interested to know of others' interests as well. So please know that. All right, we still have quorum and the commission meeting is adjourned. Oh, we ran out of time for the to and from and future agenda requests. The only to and from I put is the Earth Day celebration. And if you have any future agenda item requests, I know Mary, you had one at the beginning, Metzger. I think we have that down.
And the other question I had was, what time does the Earth Day begin? He gave us the date, the place, but I didn't hear the time.
Yeah, it's 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the main event. But there's volunteering opportunities throughout the day before and
You
after.
can wear a squirrel outfit.
Yeah. All right, and if you have any other future agenda item requests, feel free to email me. The meeting is adjourned at 6:34. Thanks, everyone.
Very much.